Chuck Beatty was in Scientology's Sea Organization for 27 years. He finally left in 2003 after spending 7 years on the Rehabilitation Project Force. I've known Chuck since the late 1970s, and this is our first time interviewing him. He's got quite a story to tell. We're going to do a series of interviews with him. I think you're going to find them interesting. Here comes Chuck Beatty. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our channel, Scientology Peeling the Onion. My name is Mark Fisher, and of course, I'm here with Janis Gillham Grady. How you doing today, Janis?
I'm doing good, Mark. And you?
I'm good. It's cold here. I mean, we look at, I know people are winter with snow and things like that, but it's windy cold here in Vegas, and I'm cold, so I got my sweatshirt on today. How about you, Janis?
Yeah, and we had a good downpour this morning. I wasn't expecting it. A lot of wind anyway. Yeah, it's nice and warm in the house.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention, too, that, just a couple of days ago, we found out that our friend Jefferson Hawkins passed away on Monday, just a few days ago. And, Janis, we're going to put together like a show, or like a remembrance show with him, right?
Yeah, we are. And I've set up a couple of people that worked with him in marketing. I just got to get it all scheduled and go through my photos and pull out photos with Jeff. So we will be honoring Jeff in a few days.
Absolutely. He was a good friend to us, and man, was he a contributor to Scientology in terms of marketing and promotion and all that sort of thing. And then, of course, he became a great voice, an important voice, speaking out against the abuses. So anyway.
Well, and you know what? He also did my book covers.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He designed them. That's right.
He designed my book covers. Yeah.
That's great. He did other people's too. Yeah, I did other people's too. Anyway, we've got a new guest for you, and this is somebody that we've known for a long time. I've known him, since the late 1970s, and he was 27 years in the Sea Organization. He finally left in 2003, and then he became an important voice speaking out. He was one of the first to really go public and speak out about the abuses of Scientology and abuses of David Miscavige. And he was a trained supervisor in Clearwater in Florida, and then during his career, he ended up working at Incom, which was a computer organization, and then Author Services Incorporated, which was the for-profit organization handling L. Ron Hubbard's books and things like that. And then he spent almost 6 or 7 years in the Rehabilitation Project Force before he left. And I'll never forget when he told me that story after he got out. I could not believe that was that long. And he's, of course, going to tell us about that as well, right, Janis?
Yeah, because well, I remember seeing his write-up, and it talked about him having been in the RPS 7 years, but I don't think it said who it was. I'm like, who would stay in the RPF that long? So anyway, we'll find out.
Yeah, and he wasn't the only one. There were a lot of people doing that, and it was really bizarre to us because when I did the RPF, I was out in 3 months, and I did the running program in it. Do you know what I mean? So it's like years. This was just really bizarre. But anyway, here is our friend, and for the first time, Chuck Beatty. We want to welcome you to the channel. Hi, Chuck. How you doing?
Hi, Mark. Hi, Janis.
Hi, Chuck. Welcome. It's been a long time since I've seen you.
Yeah, I think 2005 or so.
When you came to Vegas. Yeah, when you came to Vegas. Though we've talked a lot on the phone over the years, but face-to-face has been since, 2005. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That
20 years.
That was when you came for Mick Wenlock set up a kind of little mini reunion here in Las Vegas. And I took everybody out to dinner, right, Chuck?
Yes. I mean, you two had already established yourself. I don't know if you even remember, Janis, you had done some press with the Riverside County newspaper, and you could tell you were yourself. You were Janis, and it was on the Scientology side of things. And no matter what, you stood out, and you truly have been a person who was pretty much, like in Scientology terms, a grade 0 release, you would say what you felt all the time. And you were very emphatic. You would remind people all the time at the upper levels, little LRH stories. Why? I don't know. You want to go this way. You want to go that way. And I love that story where you tell where you were head to head with Miscavige in his office, and he was like upset with you, and he stood up from his chair and he pointed down to his chair like, "Do you want to take over?" And I swear to God, that's such a good story. You should have taken over.
Well, it was a different situation. I was in the middle of fighting at that time. That was when they were trying to send me to the RPF.
87, 88?
No, that was in 90, just before I left.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's even better. For him to even have that thought in his head is a very important historical fact, because as you guys rose into the top ranks, I'm sure it crossed your mind, who would be better than him? Because
it did cross my mind. Yeah.
When I was on the RPF and I was going through the big doubt thing in my final 7 years, I often thought, because I'm out there in the RPF, who's out there? Ray Midoff, Mike Sutter, all these other bigwigs, Mariette Lindstein, other people that kind of can even think with the, like you, Mark, AVC level of Scientology or upwards. Who's going to be the top decision maker? Who's going to stick with policy? Who can even separate out personalities from policy and how to run the movement? So I've kind of hesitated even having these discussions, because it throws you back into the turmoil and all the crap that was going on. And then how would you try to fill LRH's shoes in the way that he wished? You guys are the ones that's why I wanted to ask you. Maybe we'll have a separate program sometime and I can go over the big serious questions, these kind of things. So, but anyways, we can
do that.
Let me show. This is a photograph. This is 2003 when you left, right? This is a photograph of you shortly after you left.
Yeah, they often say that when you get out of the RPF, you're nice and scrawny, and but I was even scrawnier when I left the RPF at the end base, but I was in excellent good shape. I was in the best shape I've ever been. So the only upside of being on the RPF, if you can get past the the
mental
denigration that you're put through, I'd never even accepted any of the denigration aspect to it. I always thought of it, okay, this is your little free recharge time, and if the movement's not going to go, and it just really wasn't going to ever going to really be fixed. So it kind of was, I thought it was time to get out in the 1990s, Janis, when you left, when Mark left. Right. My God. I mean, there's the whole history of people leaving, and then you kind of lose heart in the whole thing, because, people that were really there for kind of the right reason, they're deciding to quit. So really this whole operation was off. So anyways, by the time I got out, I was hiking around my last final days in the RPF. When you learn that you can not follow the rules, I'd hiked all around the mountains around LA when I was on the RPF, and an RPF watch would come with me. So they didn't mind, because we got to do a lot of hiking.
Yeah. Well, when we get to the point of talking about the RPF, that'll be a fun conversation, because what that does to, you're right about the denigration and what that does to you mentally, but you're building up your physical condition that's gotten worn out from those long, hard hours on your post, on your job. But when you go to the RPF, you finally get some sleep, and though you get the scraps, you still get some food, and you start building up muscle, and you're away from a lot of that yelling and screaming, but there's still that denigration of when you're out and about and you see your friends who aren't allowed to talk to you.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we'll cover that in a few more interviews later on. That'll be interesting.
Yeah. So Chuck, why don't we go ahead and get started at the beginning? How did you get into Scientology? When was it? Where? And let's take people through your story here from the beginning.
I guess in the 7th grade, I came from a military background. My father was a 30-year U.S. Army veteran from 1940 until 1970, and he retired in 1970. So about 7th grade, I'd heard about Dianetics because our substitute teacher brought up Dianetics in school in Michigan. And I thought, like, what is that? And that substitute teacher, of course, they're only in the class for 2 or 3 days and they're gone. And then another teacher or the principal came in and said, please to disregard whatever that substitute teacher said about Dianetics. It's not endorsed by the school. And I'm like, what is this Dianetics? That sounds pretty weird, you know? Anyways, but it was kind of a little kooky, and because everybody even knew and that was 1964, that was first hearing. And then in 1970, I was in and out of college. After I graduated from high school, I dropped out, I think 2 times. Once, it was too hard for me. I first tried to go to the University of Maryland, way too difficult for me. And then I went to a city college in Phoenix. So I landed in Phoenix and was living there by myself. My sister lived, I have 3 brothers and sisters. My oldest sister lived in Lake Havasu. I thought I'd go to Phoenix. It's a nice big town. I could enjoy myself there and sort of progress in life. I thought that'd be a nice place. When you're a military brat moving around the world, you always feel like, yeah, I'm free to go wherever I want. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just cut to the chase. Let's go live in Arizona. Went to Arizona. That's where I got in Scientology in the summer of 1975. And I was in my 3rd year of credits for college because I dropped out of University of Maryland, got some credits there. Went to Phoenix City College for a year, got a bunch of credits there, and did extra credits during the summer months because I was already a workaholic even before I got in Sea Org. So getting in the Sea Org was actually pretty easy. Like some people said, you get into the Sea Org, and even though you think you're being run ragged, you're not really. I mean, you know, a lot of people live like that even prior. So, and I grew up in a military environment on military bases. I was overseas during the Bay of Pigs and the Berlin crisis that happened back then.
Oh, the Berlin airlift?
Yeah, the Berlin. Yeah. I forget it was when the Berlin Wall was put up. The Berlin Wall was put up, and I'd already lived in a military housing area. So, you know, living like just with all your possessions in a suitcase, I was already there, and I kind of might have been headed towards the military, but for some reason during that time, as you know, in the late 60s, early 70s, it was like sort of hippie and anti-war. So it's kind of sad that my recruiter talked me out of joining. So then I'm still like flopping around wondering what to do in life. So I go to university. And then while I was in university, I'd already taken illegal felony level hallucinogenic drugs. So I'd had that cosmic experience. You know, a lot of Hubbard's stuff is oriented to supposedly handle people with drug histories. Mine wasn't even that heavy, but per the later generations of Scientologists and Sea Org, I had a heavy drug history, even though it was like tiny compared to other people. And as you know, all the senior members like Edie Int, Senior CS Int, they were all quote unquote powerful hallucinogenic drug cases, which it gives you that cosmic experience. So that, and I'm a 1st-gen Scientologist, so I was kind of interested in the Hindu stuff. And so I was at the University of Arizona. At the end of the year, they always have these guest lecturers that come in. And I'd already been reading about a spin-off researcher to Timothy Leary named John Lilly. There's a movie about the dolphins that he trained and trying to get the dolphins to talk and all that. He also was heavily into psychedelic drugs and isolation tanks where you lay there in pitch black, take these hallucinogenic drugs, and you have these mind-blowing experiences. So I never did that, but I was kind of interested in that. And then at his lecture, he listed out about 15 groups to stay away from. Scientology, he said, was the worst. So I was madly writing them all down. And then that was like in spring of 75. And then in May of 75, I then, finished the credits for that particular, and I had 3 years now worth of credits for university that I could, so I had to do one more year. And then that's when I went to was going to Arizona State. So you have privileges in the library. So I started off just going straight to the library, reading all of the negative press on Scientology. This quote unquote due diligence that everybody, the expectation in life is that if you do your due diligence, study the media coverage of a particularly bad subject, it might talk you out of joining them. It didn't work for me. I just kept wondering, what is it? Remember that book, Janis? And you know it, Mark, too. What is Scientology?
Right. Yes.
If you're a perfectionist person, you go like, they're just beating around the bush. Hubbard's beating around the bush. Give us the beef. What are you doing? And I was frustrated with that. And it took me even years after Scientology so I could kind of dumb it down to like a 1-paragraph neutral definition that I think of what is Scientology, which if you do, I don't know if you guys have used artificial intelligence, but I've started to use artificial intelligence a lot. If you ask the right questions, you get excellent answers with lots of links, which is better than ever before. I found, and I've been able to ask a lot of questions for my sister, who has a lot of various legal questions. You can look that stuff up on the internet really good. But anyways, back to so I was thinking this sort of research mode, even getting into Scientology. So I spent like close to a month just studying all the negative press on New York Times. There used to be this thing called the periodical index before the internet. You'd go to these binders month by month in the library, and you could look up your subjects: Dianetics, Hubbard, Scientology. So I looked up Dianetics, Hubbard, Scientology, all the beginner articles, and they were all critical. They were all by really smart people, Mayo Clinic people saying, yeah, this is it's quackery, stay away. They were just very blunt about it, but they still didn't define it. So I was like, okay, I'll tepidly go into Scientology and find out what it's all about, because I'd heard a whiff that Scientology had something to do with, they have their practice, the auditing practice, which is a 2-person, pseudotherapy. And you supposedly, by asking all these questions, and there's literally thousands of questions in all these different gradients that you go through. And eventually somewhere along the line, and even Hubbard says later on, you discover from reading different things that he says, you'll get this experience of basically traveling outside of your head, out of the body experience, the exteriorization. Yes. So that was on my mind the first 2 weeks I was in Scientology, and I started proper in, I think, late May, early June. And I did the Introduction to Scientology course, which, as you know, go ahead.
Did you go into the mission or the organ?
No, I missed going to your dad's mission.
I was going to ask you, is that your dad's mission?
Said there, but as you know, when you go into the org, they're not going to let you go over to the mission. They say, stay here, hold on to you, college student. He's got money. Let's
Janis, explain about your dad's mission.
Well, my dad had the Phoenix mission on Indian School Road, and he was the executive director. And when the owner died, he passed it over to my dad, Harry, I think his name was. Anyway, so my dad had the Phoenix mission, and then Doreen Casey came along and was helping him and wanted to then turn the mission into a celebrity center for my mom. And that created a conflict between my mom and my dad, with my mom running Celebrity Center LA and my dad running the Phoenix mission. And Doreen, in the middle of the night, took half the mission staff and went and opened up the org. And so that created more conflict. But the mission survived and did fine. And the orgs, they stumbled along and they built up. And then I think eventually Les Cool ended up as the executive director. Les was a very good guy.
Yeah, and his wife and him, they were like college educated. They were really together. You know, they had their lives going, and they had a child even at that point.
Yep. Yeah, no, Les was part of a music band. That's how I met him, because my sister and I went on leave to Phoenix, and Les and Jim May were members of a band that was performing at one of my dad's events. And so that's how I met them. And then I heard that they went with Doreen to the org, and then Les ended up as the ED. So he did well. I was very proud of him.
Oh, really? That's excellent to know. And I think that, of course, he'd be a great person to interview to get his hindsight view, because I think he would agree it would have been better had he stayed back at the mission. Because the way your dad and your mother, and this is only revealed in your book, Janis, you give the background of both your parents in your book, and you go like, oh, I can get it now. If you have some really capable people starting their own mission, then they generate from the people that are even vaguely interested in what Scientology is to participate. And then you have these very capable people like your parents. They're super capable people. I'm like, oh, I should have gone to the mission. You know what I mean? But that's only after reading your book. You know what I mean? 7 years later.
Also, Chuck, too. I mean, I was the same way in D.C. I went in the D.C. org. That's when my dad brought me. But then a mission was opened in Arlington, just outside of Washington. And I started hanging out there. And it was much more of a friendly family atmosphere at the missions. You know what I mean? Like everybody got along. It was like you knew everybody. It wasn't like this big, organization, corporate thing. It was like much more familiar if you were at the missions.
There's a lot of lessons.
The missions were.
There are some lessons in this exact personal sort of like ordering people around to sort of fill in places. That's just doesn't, it grates against, I think you've brought it up in one of your talks. What was it called? Power of choice. When you hit at somebody's power of choice too many times in their life, and even Hubbard recognized this, but all of his solutions were kind of quick fixes to his dictatorial style, and that's why the negative overall hindsight conclusions about Hubbard are so seeming to be super critical of Hubbard. But if you think about it, the way he checkerboarded people around, it was just so wrong. You know what I mean? You had all these really capable people checkerboarded around, when if they would have been left to do kind of what they wanted to do, like John Galusha in your great Mike Goldstein interviews are just incredible. And then also your mother's a perfect example. She was allowed to have the Yvonne Gillham office. And I can tell you, when the Celebrity Center trainees came to do their, administrative courses when I was the assistant supervisor, they were just in awe. I mean, your mother was just incredible. She had her own office. She was given a lot of power to do what she wanted. Now, I don't think Hubbard was really good at doing that. He did it in a few instances, and then there were even little vestiges of him remember the word delegating power and awarding to somebody. Yeah. He did it with Captain Bill in Europe. He did it with Jens Bogbot in Europe. He did it with different people that he could trust. And when you study all of his orders and his day-by-day orders when he's trying to like jazz up, I mean, even if you look at some of the internet, did you know there was close to 45 to 60 int training org advices by LRH alone? Some of them were pretty dumb, but like I was floored by some of LRH's praise of Bill Franks. And you go like, wow, LRH is pumping up Bill Franks here. Like he wanted that old tough Sea Org officer thing going on. And then from getting the stats sort of in that power. In fact, that Bill Franks' stats in training org, I think came into that, we're into that affluent steep range, and then it went into a power curve. That he was like one of the only ones who legitimately had those kind of stats, and that preceded him being picked for executive director as the first executive director international.
Right.
That's what I wanted to ask you a lot more about history when we get to it, Janis. But
okay.
Let's go back to, okay, so you go to the Phoenix, Oregon. What did you do? The communications course, or what did you do?
Introduction to Scientology course. That's what I wanted. Okay. I wanted to know what are the basics. And so the two things I learned there was you can ask questions all the time. And the Div 6 course soup, his name was Steve Clear. And I thought, like, you know, when you know, like, do you change your name to Clear when you become Clear? So that was my dumb question to him. Anyway, so that happened. There's a few times in Scientology you run into people that have these names and you go like,
yeah,
wow, is that somehow tied to being a Scientologist?
It's funny though, Chuck. I remember the first time I went to Clearwater in Florida in 1976, and we drove down the Causeway from Tampa to Clearwater. It's called the Causeway. That's actually the name of the road. I was like blown away. I was only like 17 years old at the time.
Well, when they did the mission and found the Fort Harrison in Clearwater, talking to LRH about it, it was like, oh, this is a perfect name, a perfect town for us with a name like that.
Yeah. So,
anyways, you did the introduction to Scientology course, and then what'd you do?
Well, listen, I want to, if you're going to go, I want to go granular. What really stuck me to Scientology for the next 27 years was what I read in chapter Parts of Man of the book, Scientology, the Fundamentals of Thought. So on the intro course, you read Problems of Work and you read Scientology, Fundamentals of Thought. So because it's the introduction to Scientology course. Now, personally, and then you have to clay demo the Parts of Man. So during the Parts of Man, that's like a jewel of piece of knowledge. That's where you learn for the first time that you are the soul that you are, and you're not your body, and you're most likely located in your skull. And then LRH says boldly, bluntly in the Parts of Man chapter that the optimum state of the thetan, the soul, the consciousness, the awareness of the awareness unit, what you actually are, your core being that you are, not your body things, which you don't even learn about until you get up to OT3. But you learn that you, the one who's talking, the one who's, moving your hands around, doing life, you are capable, and the optimum position for you is exterior to your body. That sold me for all of my 27 years in Scientology right there. And then further, I had a good course supervisor, a good Div 6 course supervisor. And of course, I just was floored by that. I said, like, well, how do you get out of your body? And he showed me creation and human ability. Be 3 feet back of your head. I thought, holy crap. So that's what it is. So even back in these early books of 1954, Creation and Human Ability, or 53, and then 1956, Fundamentals of Thought and Problems of Work, you learn these basics that you are a soul, and that Scientology processes, like telling somebody else, okay, start a process, be 3 feet back of your head. I mean, if the person gets the concept that they are a soul, they might just, eject out of their head. So that to me was then fulfills the promise of Scientology, which says it's going to teach that you are an immortal soul, and then that fits in with transmigration, with lifetime to lifetime. And it kind of just like, for 2 hours, I was blown away after learning that. And that's just the introduction to Scientology course. So that stuck with me the whole time. That, and then the question answering from the good Div 6 course supervisor. And I hadn't even met Russ Williams, who was the regular course supervisor there. When Russ is, as you know, he's a brain. He knows everything. He was like the perfect, course supervisor, in my opinion, later on. So then I did the next course was the H2S course. And I did not like that one because at the end of it, it makes you sign on the dotted line that you're now a Scientologist, because the name of the course is Hubbard Qualified Scientologist. And I balked at signing. I said, like, I don't know enough yet, And then if you show me the red chart and you show that I'm right down here at the bottom and there's all the rest, and I'm signing on to this whole thing, I go, like, you have to put a lot of faith that this is the right direction. And I kind of was more like a book reader. And even recently I talked to former Scientology OT8s and
Right.
have good conversations with them, and looking at myself and where I stand, quote unquote, spiritually in terms of Scientology. I would be at best a Scientology book reader.
I was just going to say, for our viewers there that were never involved in Scientology, what you're saying about, yeah, you are a spiritual being, be 3 feet behind your head and all that, Scientology, Hubbard teaches you, or what you learn is that your body is just a vessel. It's like a car. You know what I mean? It's like you are in control of the car. You're in control of your body. You're in control of your brain. You are the one looking at, perceiving what's around you, perceiving what's in your brain, what's in your head. And that when this body dies, you're a spiritual being, you go on and you get another body. I mean, that is basically one of the main concepts of Scientology, right, Chuck?
Yeah. It is earth-shattering. It's an earth-shattering piece of information if you haven't heard that before.
Yeah, because I grew up where it's not your spirit. You're not the body. You are the spirit, and you're the one who controls the body. That's how my parents. And you're at cause as the spirit.
Yeah, in other words, you make things happen. You make things happen. Things can happen to you. You can be the effect if you choose to let them, but you are the one who should be in control, meaning you, the spiritual being. That's a key component of Scientology.
Right,
anyway.
Right.
It's one of my other further questions for you two at a later interview, which I'd love to do, is so I was a philosophy major. I'll just go back to that. I was a philosophy major at Arizona State University. And of course, when you get up to your third and fourth years as a philosophy major, you then realize there are just a whole bunch, a good 10, 20 major splits in a person's philosophy about life and so forth. And one of the reasons why I was driven into Scientology was in my philosophy class. I was kind of like, I'd be like a C beast type of student, honestly. But I was slow learner, but I was patient, and that I've thought, okay, I've heard plenty of talk growing up already by the time I was even in university, that you don't necessarily learn everything about life, obviously, in your 4 years of college. You have to continue your adult education and read in life and carry on in all your different pursuits. So I thought, okay, that's the way to go. So you kind of get your quickie degree, get out, get in a job where you can make enough money so you can survive in life. And then if your goal, like my sister says of me, is just to study things for a couple of years, and that's true. Even right now, I'm studying stuff for about 3 to 5 years now, and I'm about a fourth of the way through. It's going to take me another couple of years to finish what I'm currently studying on. And that's why I wanted to talk to you maybe at another time about where you guys are at in life in terms of quote unquote religion or just science thinking. Where are the extents of your knowledge interest in the whole cosmos and the whole realm of.
I'll say for now, I don't follow any gurus.
Yeah. I follow Janis. I follow Janis, Gillham, Grady.
Okay, good. Yeah, let's just keep it to what you guys know and are expert of, and draw more people to be interviewed that can fill out these little parts of the history that you guys have lived and helped really buck the whole system, and also bring about this whole sort of flowering of other people's books and every stuff like that to really, at least bring up the subject. So if somebody is ever interested in the university level, like I've thought there's ample ex-member books of some Scientologists right now for a sociology student in any university, and it should be the University of Florida, if you ask me, because Flag's in Florida. So there should be some sociologists in the University of Florida system that at least take an interest in Scientology. But that's one of my pet beasts right now.
Right.
Okay, so back to
let's carry on. You HQS course, you didn't want to sign that thing. So then what happened from there?
Now there's other parts of the HQS course I didn't like either, which are the TRs. Now I understand I had really super big wins on OTTR0 where you just sit there, be there, and do nothing else. So do you know what that is? there's 8 levels of the Polycanon Buddhism. That's third to the top. Third to the top is to meditate on nothing. No thingness. The Buddha talks about it. And I've studied enough of Buddhism now to know Hubbard is just full of it and thinking that he's even a possible return of the Buddha. If you study, and I'm studying the Polycanon, which is the one of the most complete sets of the actual Buddha's discourses. That's what I've been studying the last 5 years, 3 to 5 years off and on, but now I've gotten serious about it. And so by comparison, there's just no comparison with what Hubbard says. There are some comparisons and different things. We can talk about that, but on a whole nother show, if you ever wanted to get into it. But back to what I was doing on the HQS course, you do your TRs in there. You do, and you also do objectives, CCHs. No, what do you do? No, you do the lower TRs, and then you do the upper indocs.
Upper indoc TRs, yeah.
Yeah, and I think you do self-analysis. You do a couple self-analysis processes, and I don't know. You don't do the CCHs. That'd be, hand moving, that kind of stuff. That's coming later. That's going to be later on your objectives when you do your objectives. So anyways, at the end of the HQS course, and of course, every time you go to the examiner, that's a horrible phenomenon because when you're like a never in Scientology, you haven't been grooved in, that you got to put on a false front and be super cheery to get the needle to flow. And you don't know all about the thing about how do you get that needle to flow. And then the guys like you mentioned, Les Cool and Jim May, it took those level of Scientologists to sit down with you. You go to Qual after you failed to get a floating needle on your little Div 6 course, floating needle, and you say, why do I write a 6th story? I haven't really gotten what I came here for yet. So I was kind of like that kind of a beginner Scientologist. And then you go on the XQS course, and I felt like I was being pushed into being like a Scientologist. Right. Are you kidding? I'm not even there yet. Now, had you grown up and had you done, TRs hundreds of times and stuff like that, I had a hard time doing the TRs with people that were smarter than me. And of course, I feel most people are smarter than me. So if you sit down to do TRs, somebody smarter, you can't bull bait them. It's just not a comparable. Right. It's like trying to be a good auditor for somebody who obviously doesn't consider you like on par with them. And I think that's another really very important point. You learn right away in Scientology, maybe this isn't going to work for me. You have to be to be a good auditor, and you're learning some of the auditor basics in the Hubbard Qualified Scientologist, and when you do the TRs, because the TRs aren't just hypnotism being driven into you. You're also supposed to be trying to become a good auditor by doing the TRs. And TR3 really gave me a problem, because on TR3 you're reaching over and you're putting your hand on somebody's shoulder to prevent them from leaving the session, and you have to do that as well on TR4. And that to me, it just grates you the wrong way. You go like, are we treating each other like we're psychotics? Because I can understand if a person's in a mental institution and they're trying to bolt out the door, you would restrain them. But Hubbard's teaching you on TR3 and TR4 already to treat each other like that they're caught up in their engrams or whatever and are mental at the moment. So as a Scientologist, you're being authorized and drilled to be this. And that seemed to be, I don't think psychiatrists, and unless the person's in a mental institution, they've already lost their right. We shouldn't be preventing people from leaving the session on their own will. But Hubbard says that's wrong.
I was just going to say, go ahead, Janis.
Yeah, I grew up with a mission in our home. So I watched people doing TRs, and I never questioned it, but they would sit there doing their training drills and, staring at each other, bull baiting and all that kind of stuff. And, we did the mimicking, the CCHs, and I watched all this.
People became super fast at shooting their arm out to grab you so you couldn't leave. So your coach could leave the session.
I saw nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Because I grew up, I was born into Scientology. So when I was aware of things, there was people who were always coming to the house and they would sit down and do the TRs, and they would do these drills of someone trying to leave and the other person trying to stop them. So it was all natural to me that is part of life.
because you had really good parents, and all of the adults in the room knew that was just part of kind of not the main thing of what Scientology was to be. It was more about ARC. And that's the other thing that I got in the intro course was ARC is like so fundamental and so important to the whole movement. And then you go like, yeah, why don't the top leaders? Because as you age and move up the ranks, you go like, there's only a few of the leaders in their best moments that have ARC. And then you have a number of examples of no ARC. So it's like one of the most fundamental principles of the movement needed to be beefed up.
Let me explain to our viewers who are never in Scientology. ARC is affinity, reality, communication equals understanding. And it basically, it means being warm to people and being welcoming and that type of thing. It's a Scientology term, right? Like I have a lot of ARC for Janis. I have a lot of ARC for Chuck, or vice versa. You know what I mean? So that's what he's talking about, and it's, if somebody's cold and standoffish and all that, you would say they lack ARC. So I just wanted to explain that, number one. Number two, when you're talking about the TR3 and TR4 preventing people from leaving, I just want to say that the purpose of the drill, just so people know, is that they're training you to be an auditor, to be a counselor for the person that's sitting across from you. So the drill is meant so that if somebody gets involved in something, I mean, we've all in life run into people that when they start to confront something, they just want to bolt. They don't want to look at it. They want to leave. And Hubbard's viewpoint on it was, no, you need to use ARC and convince them to stay, because his viewpoint was the way out was the way through. In other words, you don't bolt and leave. You're there to help the person look at it and get through it, not let them go, because then they're all restimulated and upset and that type of thing. So, but you can take it to the extreme, like Chuck's saying, where you can actually physically, no, you need to stay. So I just wanted to explain that there are varying degrees on that, and that's what it was for, was to basically help the person. Yeah.
Well, also, Mark, another point on that, it's not that a PC trying to leave because they have a withhold or an overt that they don't want to get off. It can also happen, though, in a Dianetic session where the person is running an incident down the whole track, or, just a few hours ago or whatever, and it's something that they don't want to confront. So they don't want to do the session and they want to just leave. And that's where the auditor with ARC would kind of, okay, well, let's get through this and sit them back down nicely or whatever. So it's not just trying to blow from it, getting off a withhold. It's also not wanting to look at something that's really affecting them that could cause grief or anger mentally.
Right. And the whole purpose of that is so that the person could get at cause over it. In other words, like, that's no longer negatively affecting me. That's how Hubbard's, that was the whole training, was that you're getting the person through it so that negative effect is no longer affecting them. And the only way that he felt that you could do that was go through it, go earlier, similar, until it goes away. So anyway, I just wanted to explain that, just for our non-Scientology people that are watching this. Anyway, go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah, I would say that's really, really important. For instance, I'm totally supportive of that kind of attitude. Although there's a couple of other factors. Nobody in Scientology is that I know of, with the exception of member Sarge Gerbode.
Yeah, he's still alive.
Was a trained psychiatrist. Monica Pignati, she became a counselor, a trained psychologist afterwards. Did Jim Dincalci? I'm sure he was.
Yes, he did.
Okay. Now, I believe from an expert's level, this issue of TR3 and TR4 is something that needs to be taken up in a professional, because we have licensed psychologists and psychiatrists. They're bound by certain rules. There are detrimental effects, very detrimental effects by doing TR3 or TR4 wrongly on a human being. It then puts them in the prisoner state of mind. And then how can you shouldn't even bring that about. Like there's so many positives. Like the positive would be to look at the Dan Kuhn TR's movie and watch Dan Kuhn's final session. Dan Kuhn's final session with the auditor at the end of the Pro TR's movie, the only movie that stayed the longest, being directed by LRH, and it should have remained. It should remain. And look, if anybody were to take over Scientology again, they should just reissue the Dan Kuhn TR movie, okay? Because it has so many other important things in it. And then I was an expert on TRs, word by word by word by word by word. I wasn't necessarily a good auditor. I failed as an auditor, flag auditor, even though I got through one internship there, got my passes from Dale Mayo and Brian Livingston, but then I failed. But I think it's more on the professional level of what I think outside human who are really capable of being excellent counselors in life. Let's take a Glenn Samuels. You guys remember Glenn Samuels?
Sure.
Yes.
He was a natural auditor type of person. This John Galusha, as spoken about by Mike Goldstein, and even Mike Goldstein himself has a very incredible auditor presence. Dan Kuhn has an incredible auditor presence. And if you're an expert in auditing, you know that Perseus Series 1, even if the pre-clear doesn't know jack about who their auditors are, the pre-clear still can be stimulated by the auditor and they're not a good fit. Or, you could be like I felt I was, which I just wasn't up to par for flag public, who are high-paying public. They're usually extremely wealthy people, offspring of wealthy people. They have a different standard of life. It's very difficult. And then somebody who like Ron Norton could be a really good auditor because he lived in that sort of upper middle class life and he understands that. And I think people that came from like more well-to-do families and did have a really good lot of compassion. But then there are some remarkable people that just have a lot of empathy and they're just natural counselors. But you have to have a certain amount of understanding of life to really be a good psychiatrist or a good counselor, a really effective one, and understand life. And I don't believe that Scientology can drill you. Co-auditing works if, like you, Mark, you got to co-audit with what? Stacy Brooks? Okay, I can understand that. And Janis, who did you get to co-audit with in your years?
Oh, I did it with Bill Fosdick. Okay,
so with guys that were really capable, they had proven production records. They are flexible. They could, So I think a lot of Scientologists have been very fortunate to interact with other really capable and competent people in life. So their whole idea of Scientology is sort of built up on the backs of those capable and competent people who came along, who kind of, played the Hubbard system in a decent way, and then the Scientologists who received that attention and competent handling, had a good experience with Scientology. So anyway,
Chuck, what you're saying, I totally agree with you. I mean, it's not one size fits all. I mean, there's an art to counseling and to auditing. There are people that just had that ARC and were able to control and get in communication with the person that they were trying to counsel. And I mean, we have numerous examples of that. Trey Lotz is like that. Karen de la Carriere was like that. There's just people that just had, you just felt comfortable with them. And then there are others that were real wrote, and you didn't feel as comfortable with them. Yeah. So there was an art to it as well, not just a skill.
So Phoenix Art at that time, Janis, you picked up on the mix of people that were there. So you had these really good people from your dad's mission in Phoenix. And it was kind of like that, well, Phoenix is actually an okay place, because when I then came to Flag to be Sea Org in December of 75, and you brush elbows with the very evaluative non-ARC Jeff Walker, who's the chief cramming officer, class 12. And I sat before him the very first conversation. He said, "Oh, you're from Phoenix. Catherine Glenn is from there too," who then became, for a time, Amos Jessup's wife, Catherine Jessup, for a while. And Catherine Glenn, luckily, ushered me in. So, and I was dressed pretty decently. And Jeff Walker gave me a pass just because I kind of came from Phoenix org, and it was only because Catherine Glenn, who probably may have been a public from the Gillham mission, because there just weren't the same quality of public and people. It was kind of weird. And then Marilyn Brewer, the late Marilyn Brewer, I believe she had a lot to say about that, because I think she was the second on that Doreen Casey mission and knew a lot about the turmoil behind the scenes that was going on with all the personnel. But it really comes down to really the people who came over who were really good in the mission. And I say that was why I got through. Now, there were some bad ones. The ethics officer, I could not believe it, because I was then and still now, I would be, per the Hubbard definition, it's called suppressively reasonable. I had this major cognition when I was on the RPF. So even though I was on the RPF for 7 years, I had a good time. I mean, I realized all the people who were staying in the Sea Org, they're going to suffer for years more. I'm going to get out. I'm getting out of this place. Eventually, I knew that a reprieve was coming. That was the only downside of the 7 years in the RPF. I was like, there aren't these big reprieves like they used to be. How they used to just empty out the RPF.
Yeah,
they didn't do that. They didn't do that after you guys left. They didn't do these big emptying of the RPFs. Not until you have some tragedy on the RPF or something like that, when they just close down the whole thing, which I think they've done to a certain degree now. But still, back in that period of 96 to 2000, when I was out at Happy Valley, I was just hoping that a big reprieve was going to come along. I was just biding my time, enjoying myself there. So, but anyways, back to I was just at the HQS course. I then started on the Dianetics course, HSDC, Hubbard Standard Dianetics course. So now it's getting serious, because it was going to go HSDC, and then I was going to do my HSDC internship. Internships where you basically get another person, you co-audit. So that's the way it's going to go. So, and in a way, I was starting to slow down at that point. I was going and then unfortunately the regging, Jim May was the less cool, he was good at regging, and his wife was the OES, the over the tech and qual divisions, and but she was also handling her daughter or son at that time. And Jim May had to be the one who regged me to get onto the Dynamics course. Otherwise, I was going to exit after HQS course and just return to what I really felt I should have been, which is I just wanted to study all the LRH books. I loved, when I walked in the org and I saw the OEC volumes, that was the other thing I saw in those first couple of months was the OEC volumes. They just had come out. And I thought wow, that's incredible. By 1975, summer 75, the old OEC volumes were there. The ones that came out from Bridge over in Copenhagen and stuff
by Ken Delderfield. Yeah, Ken Delderfield did that.
Oh yeah, and I would love to go into his contributions to Scientology. He's in the top 5. If you look at what
Ken Delderfield,
he's off the charts. And I was on the RPF my final 7 years, quote unquote, on the RPF. He was out there. Remember Don Bateman?
Sure.
Yes.
He was Mary Sue's. He was in Mary Sue's entourage on the Apollo. Anyways, he and Delderfield were twinned on the RPF, and I didn't have very many conversations. I mean, Delda's, in my mind, he's way up there. Anyways,
Deld was from our mission in Melbourne,
in Australia.
In Australia. And he and my dad were great friends. And after swimming on the weekends, we'd get off the freeway, stop and get ice cream, and go over to Deld's and Rosemary's, Ken Delderfield and Rosemary Delderfield's, and would hang out there for a while before we headed home. That was pretty much nearly every week.
They were both a very high level of loyalty, because Rosemary Delderfield lived right across the street from the complex on that Catalina Street. She still lived there when I was on the RPF routing out in 2003. She still lived there. Yeah. And she did proofreading for, I think that was her profession, was a proofreader. And I mean, there were, I remember talking to Vanilla Laserve, and she made a point that I thought was extremely, and that applies to you and Paul. there are these sort of power couples that in my mind kept me as the little drone guy that I was, 3 or 4 levels below you guys, going, because I thought power couples like you and Paul, Deld and Rosemary, even though they split up many years earlier, but you kind of like Vanilla and Edie and like Shelley and Miscavige, you kind of think, okay, you could possibly swing it, but this whole communal messed up lifestyle down at the bottom, down at the org level or at the mission level, probably the mission level, that's probably the sanest as far as like the second dynamic. And then it gets worse as org level, gets worse at CLO level because you're a checker. You get up to the next couple levels, not unless you get into what are called those, LRH called them the Sea Org Turtle. Remember the Sea Org Turtle referenced by LRH? He says like they're the ones that just sort of plod along, keeping their, like doing what they're doing. So I figured, okay, so being a supervisor is, in a way, if you're a good enough supervisor, you can kind of maintain yourself in a turtle position because you become sort of a viable, stable terminal and you don't get checkered around all the time. Unless, I guess you, Mark, you had stability by being a good person, foil, and placator, and hanging around, making things life. You were actually, when you study all the LRH's tech, Mark, you employed a lot of estotech. I don't know if you studied the estotech, but there's some estotech that you did when you were at Gold by making sure that people didn't get ground up. And then Janis, you're kind of like the full bloom, full array of LRH. So, when you're coming up and as I went through my career, I did have a lot of respect for people that Kima Dunleavy to me was one of the model sort of like Scientologists that kind of made Jim Dinkowski would be another. I wish Kerry Gleason hadn't gone the little tough guy route. Didn't suit him, but he did the other things that LRH really asked of Sea Org members, which was become a Class 12, get to OEC FEBC, get up to staff status 6, and then during the mid 80s, I think you guys were there at the end base when that stuff.
I did it too, Chuck. I did it on my 2.5 hours of study a day. I was only a full-time student when I did Key to Life. Other than that, I got through my OEC, FEBC, DSEC all on staff training. Excellent. I mean, that we'll get into that later because Chuck was like the supervisor of training staff. But you were supposed to get 2.5 hours of study or enhancement a day, and a lot of people didn't get it because they didn't take it because they couldn't. They were up all night working and they couldn't be suitable. But I always made sure that I was there, and because I wanted to learn like you did, Chuck. I wanted to learn, and become more effective at what I was doing.
Okay, I'll answer a question, then I want to ask both of you. Here's the question I asked myself. You walk in the org, you see the bridge, you see all those levels, and immediately your head starts to swim. You go like, how do you possibly do all those levels? So therefore, that was one of my repeat questions for the first 2 or 3 months in there. I said, where are you? Where are you? And everybody is at a certain place. You're at a certain place on the grade chart where you've progressed to. Case-wise, you've gone a certain number of levels, and then you've gotten a certain level of processing. Now, you want your leaders at the top of the movement to be Class 12s and staff status, 8 or 7 or whatever the top is, where you've studied all of the administrative writings of Hubbard. You studied the full canon. They're called canons, like a major author of a major subject. All of their writings are the canon. What's in CST and archives today would be the L. Ron Hubbard canon. So as I slowly moved my 27 years through the movement, I used to think of these type of questions, and it dawns on you when you're a newbie. You walk in there, how many of the people in an intro, even a mission, now your father was pretty good. He was like, what, Class 6, and your mom was a Class 8?
Yeah, he was a Class 8. Both were Class 8s.
Class 8s to me are the minimum for what? All of the top councils, and we could talk about this later, Janis, but my interest, you can see my interest is getting these bigger questions and that's going to be my big questions for you guys at maybe the later discussion. So let's dial it back to, okay, so I'm going in there. I'm still thinking of the big chart, that big bridge that never stops to be in my mind the whole time I'm there. That is what is called the syllabus. That's the courses that you have to do. Your required courses to get to the top of Scientology, to become a Karen de la Care. And Karen didn't even do the OEC, FEBC, PR. And then there was supposed to be a Sea Org. Remember, there was talk in the 1980s of there being a Sea Org briefing course. You remember that?
Yeah,
okay,
briefly.
Yep. Okay, I know it's kind of like it's just too much on everybody's plates. You're just all the top people. We're all running around getting stuff done. And Mark, you did excellently. But I immediately think of somebody who was a class 12. I think of, okay, there's Perry Gleason. He managed to somehow do it. There was also
Jill Gleason.
Who?
Jill Gleason.
Jill, did she do it too?
Yep.
Oh my God.
She was a 12.
Okay.
She was a CS.
So
class 12
there's
CS.
There's no reason they should have been forced out of the movement during that big comment that you were on, Mark. Yeah. They should have been salvaged. That was another thing. Remember Murdoch McBride? It's been mentioned by Neil Sephardi, and one of his things in one of his photographs is Murdoch McBride. That just hit me like a punch, when I was in Clearwater, and I was just in Clearwater just for a few months, and then Murdoch decides to route out. Did he?
No, he blew. He was supposed to meet me across the road at the courthouse, which was the nightclub, and instead he decided to blow because anyway. And then Dave Englehart did a big car chase through Clearwater with the pouring with rain, with Murdoch trying to escape. And
I chatted with Murdoch, like when you're walking back and forth between the Fort Harrison and the Clearwater building. I just chatted with him once. And, when people are, this was before leaving and leaves policy. And I think he might have been part of the reason LRH wrote that one, because there were a lot of people leaving in the 76. Let's get to 76 and we can talk about it then, because I thought the history and what I wanted to do with you guys are at some point get the discussion up to the point where the people who are involved, like Neil Sephardi, is with jokers and degraders. The gambler. We don't have Ron Gablehouse to talk to, but he was the gambler, right? Or what is somebody else?
I don't remember who it was. Well, there was a bunch of crew that used to go to the casino in Madeira. Okay. And they'd come back losing, and it might have been Grumps. Yeah.
Because here's the thing. We're all going to be gone at some point in time. But there are going to be people 50 years from now who are watching your videos because
that's why we do them.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
That's why we're doing them. Yeah.
Carry on. I said oh God. He says I'm going to be that much more powerful as a being. I'm not going to go exterior, but my student auditing, you're going to have to do the student auditing, which is just a few sessions, and to show that you can get very well done sessions, and then you're going to go on to the internship. So I eventually did that, and then I went on the internship, and that's when I joined the Sea Org. I skipped the internship and joined Sea Org.
All right, okay, we'll carry on on the next show about how who recruited you and how did you get in the Sea Org, what you did, and we'll carry on.
Ned Granis, remember Ned Granis?
Oh sure, Ned Granis. That's funny. Anyway, but we're going to be doing a lot of shows with you because I'm enjoying this the conversation. I enjoy discussing the different things about Scientology, this and that, and you're very well informed in terms of the history and knowledge and stuff. So it's kind of fun to reminisce about these things because I haven't thought about these things in a long time.
He's even said things I've wanted to comment on, but I haven't had a chance. So I'm enjoying this.
cut it off at 45 next time so she can answer.
That's not a problem at all. So here's what we're going to do, everybody. We want to thank everybody for being here, and we have to mention Janis's complete liquid multivitamins from Outback Natural. They're a sponsor of our show. Go down below, click on the link in the description in our merchandise store. It's a 1-month supply of liquid vitamins, peach flavored. Once you open it, keep it refrigerated, shake it up, take a little shot or 2 tablespoons and you've done your vitamins for the day. You don't have to take a whole handful of pills. And they're very good, and I got quite a few orders on it. But you can get them in our merchandise store down below, or Janis, they can go to vites.com, which is VITES.com.
That's
correct?
right. Yep. Ditch the pills and drink the power. Drink the power.
There you go.
Hey, and Chuck, you just ordered yours. Have you taken it yet?
I've taken it for 2 days. Yeah. The way I shouldn't, I don't know if this is okay to say this, but when you take it on an empty stomach, you get a little buzz.
Like a niacin buzz.
Well, I didn't get that kind of buzz. I don't get that kind of buzz. I get like a little bit of an energy boost, for myself.
You get a rejuvenation thing. Sort of like,
okay,
that's
good.
What, I eat salad for breakfast too. That gives you a buzz too.
Yeah. Anyway, so you can go down below, Complete Liquid Multivitamins, order it away. The other thing I wanted to mention is please subscribe to our channel. Rock slam that like button and hit that notification button so that way you know when we have our next video up with Chuck and other people. We've got quite a few really good guests already lined up here in January of 2026, and we're going to be doing several interviews with them, so definitely make sure you subscribe. The other thing is please go down below if you have any questions or comments. Go down there, write your question, write your comments. Chuck is always in there. I'm sure he'll be checking them, and we will be as well. We always answer them for you. So we appreciate any feedback that you have in there. If you'd like to support our channel, you could buy us a coffee. There's a link in the video description down below. You click on it. It's just a way to support the channel so we can continue doing these videos. Anyway, have you got anything else, Chuck or Janis, you want to say before we end off the video here?
Chuck?
Tons of questions for Janis. Tons.
Okay. Well, we'll be back.
I've got the answers.
That's it. She is the answer girl. So anyway, until next time, everybody. Bye-bye. We'll see you.
Bye.